Okay, so hi there, greetings of the day. My name is Sarthak Agarwal, and in this video, I will create a REST API using Spring Boot framework and will then implement CRUD operations on MySQL database. Then I will also show you how you can test your API using Postman. So let's start with basics of Spring Boot and REST API. So Spring Boot is a Java framework which is built on top of Spring. It facilitates rapid application development, which means as a developer, we don't need to struggle with configuration and setup processes and just need to focus on the logic of our application. It is a microservice based framework, and making a production ready application in it takes very less time. Some of its most important features include like auto configuration, easy creation of REST endpoints. We get embedded servers like Tomcat, Jetty, and many more. Now let's talk about REST APIs. So REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is sometimes also called RESTful APIs. It is a programming interface that follows the constraints of REST architecture, and it allows intersection with RESTful web services. Okay, so I will share some of the links from where you can get more information about these technologies. Now let's start with our application. So before creating our application, we need an IDE. I will be using STS. You can use IntelliJ, Eclipse as per your choice. Okay. So to create a new project, click on File, New, and Spring Starter Project. This kind of pop-up will appear. From here, we need to set the name of our API and the type, Java version, then the package. So the name of, you can set the name of your API. From here, I have set My REST API. Then you can change the type. I have chosen Maven. The packaging will be jar. Java version, you can change it as per the version that you have installed on your system. I have version 17, so I'm using 17. Okay, so click on next. Now this is very important. From here we need to add dependencies. Okay, so first dependency that we need is Spring Data JPA. Then we need a Spring Web, and as we will be using MySQL, so we need a MySQL driver as well. If you do not get these options here, you can search it from here like MySQL driver. Yeah, you will get it from here. Okay, so click on next and finish. Now it will take some time to create the project. Before that, if you are not getting this option like Spring Starter project, you might be using Eclipse or IntelliJ, and there you might not get this option if you're using the older version of those IDs. So in that case, what you can do is go to Google, search for springinitializer.io. Click on the very first link, and now from here you can create your project. You can choose Maven, then the project name, My REST API. You can change the description, then the package name, Java version, and to add dependencies, click on Add Dependencies, and from here you can get all the dependencies. Like I want Spring Web, so yes, this is the dependency that you can add. After making it, you can just click on Generate, and it will generate a zip file for you. After generating the zip file, only thing you need to do is go to the file section and import that project. Okay, so see, our project is made. Similarly, your project will also appear in the similar way. Okay, so now let's go to src main Java. Then we have got our package com.myrest.api. In this package, you will find your Spring Boot application. Okay, so this is our Spring Boot application. So before we start creating our Spring Boot application, it is very important to have clear picture of Spring Boot architecture in our mind. For that, go to Google and search for Spring Boot architecture. In Spring Boot, we have different layers, and yeah, this is the exact picture of Spring Boot architecture. We have layers like controller layer, which is responsible to handle all the HTTP requests. Then we have service layer, model layer, database layer, and finally a repository layer. So first we need to create these layers in our Spring Boot project. So let's start creating them. Right click on com.myrestapi, new, and class. We'll keep all our these classes in different packages which will represent different layers. So this will be our controller layer, and the name will be REST API controller. You can change the name as per your choice. It is not mandatory to use the same name. So our this class will act as a controller. So it is a REST controller. Since we are building a REST API, we need to import this annotation. Okay. So what I can do is I will directly say asterisk after creating the controller class. Next is a service. So again, right click, new, class, and this time the name will be my REST API service, and the package will be dot service. Now again, let our Spring Boot know that it will be our service class. So here also have to import the annotation. Yes. Again, what I can do is I will write asterisk over here. Okay. So now our controller is prepared, service is prepared. Now next we need new class, a repository class. Okay. So package will be repository and name will be my REST API repo. Okay. Finish. And again we will tell our Spring Boot that it will be act as repository class. Might be some spelling mistake. Yes. So our controller is prepared, repository is prepared, service is prepared. Now we also need a model class. So again, new class dot model, and the name will be my REST API model. Okay. So we have created controller, model, repository, and service. Okay, so now we also have to set up database. I will be using MySQL. You can use PLSQL or whatever database you prefer. For that, go to SRC, main, resources, and then click on application properties. There are some properties that we need to specify. Like I'm using MySQL. So in MySQL, you have to specify these properties: spring.dataSource.driver class name equal to com.mysql.cg.jdbc.driver. Okay, then we have spring dot data source dot url. Okay, so here you will specify the url, that is jdbc colon mysql colon double slash localhost colon port number, that is 3306, then slash, and the database name question db. I have this database already available on my system. If you want, you can create with any name, it is not mandatory. Okay, then we need to also tell the Spring Boot what is the username and password. Data source dot username. This in my case it is root, it might be different in your case. Spring dot data source dot password, and we have spring dot jpa dot hibernate dot ddl auto equal to update. Okay, so you don't need to learn these properties by heart, but just need to know what these means. Okay. So now, as you can see, we have created the controller layer, model layer, repository layer, service layer, and our database layer, or you can say a database is also prepared. So now we need to make these services interact with each other and just need to write our business logic. Rest everything will be handled by Spring Boot. So let's first create our model class. So basically, Spring Boot follows the concept of ORM, which means object relational mapping. So in this case, what you can think is the name of the class will become the name of the table, and the all the variables in this class will act as a single column in that table, and each new object of this class will act as a new row of that table. So let's see how we have to create it. First of all, you need to specify that my this class will be an entity class, which simply means a table. Okay, let me import this annotations first. Okay, now we will specify our class variables. Let's say we are creating a class name student. Okay, I'm changing the name of the class over here, and let me refactor it. Okay, so student will have a roll number, student will have a name, and student will also have a course, that is BTech, BCom, or anything. Okay, so when we specify this annotation entity over here, this means that our student class will become a table, and the name of that table will be student. Now here we also need to specify what will be the primary key for this table, annotation ID. Okay, and in our case, roll number will be the primary key. Now let me quickly first generate getters and setters for these methods. If you are using Lombok, then it is not necessary. But if you remember, while we were setting up the dependencies, we did not take Lombok as our dependency. So we have to create it manually. Okay. So right click on source, generate getters and setters, select all and generate. Now let me also generate toString method. Again source and generate toString. Okay. Generate. So you can see I have simply created three variables: roll number, name, and course. And I've also generated their getters and setters method. So you won't believe that just adding two annotations, that is entity and ID, our table will be created in our database with name as student and the roll number name as the column name. And each object that we will create of this class will act as a single row with different values for the table. Okay. Okay, so now we have our table, and now let's perform CRUD operations on our student table. For that, go to controller, as controller is responsible to handle all the requests that will be coming from the client side. So here is a small thing that we need to understand. Since we will be accepting requests through HTTP, it has its methods that work as CRUD operations. Like for creating a new resource, it has post, for reading it has get, for update put, and for deleting a resource it has delete method. So let's first create a data. For that, let me first add a base URL. So our base URL will be my REST API. Okay. Now for creating, we will be using post method. So we will add the notation post mapping, and the URL will be let's say create, or we can say add. Okay. And let us now create the method for it. So we will be returning response entity, and it will return a string. The benefit here of using response entity is I will also be able to represent or handle the HTTP status codes. Okay, so I will show it later to you how you can use it. Now let the method name will be add student. Again, the name could be any as per your choice, and we will accept the data. Since we are inserting the data, so we need the data from the client, that is we need the student roll number, name, and its course. So we will accept the data through request body, and it will be of type student. Okay, stud. Yeah, and it will be returning. Now, role of controller is to accept the request and pass the service, because the service will be having all the business logic. So here we service is where we will write all our business logic. Okay, so REST controller will pass the data, pass the request to the service as per the requirement of our request. Okay, so I will return here. Let me first import the service. So it will be my REST API service, API service, and I don't want to create its object right now, so I will just add the annotation auto wired. Okay, I also need to import my REST API and response entity as well. The student class is also not imported, and now I will return API service dot add student, and will pass that stud variable in it. Now here the error is we do not have created any method with add student name in API.service. So let's create a method. Create method. So I will directly create it from here. Yes, the method is created. Now what we will do is, okay, so now we have come to the service class. So here we have to write all the business logic. So now here what we need to do is we need to add this stud object into the table, that is the student table. And as I mentioned earlier, this object will act as single row which will have different values. So to enter these into the table, we first of all need the table. So before that, let me go to my REST API repo, which is responsible or is acting as a DAO, that is data access object. So here what we need to do is, it will not be a class, but it will be an interface which will extend JPA repository. Okay, and it takes two parameter. The first one is the name of the model class. In our case, it's student, and the type of the primary key. So our primary key was roll number, and its type was integer. Okay, so let me import it. Yeah, there is some typo mistake, and let me also import the student class. Yes. So now the thing is, this class will act as a DAO, and it will be responsible for accessing the data and will be performing all the operations, that is create, read, update, and deletion. Now what I need to do is get back to my REST API service, and I will create its object. That is the object of the my REST API repo. My REST API repo, and again I will use auto wiring over here. Let me again import it. So now we have got our repo object. So using this repo object, we can now perform all the CRUD operations. So in add student class, first of all, we will keep all our code in try and catch, as it is one of the best practices. So here we get a predefined method, that is save. Using that save method, I can create a new row, and I will pass this object, that is stud object, which will create a new row into the table student, and will add all the values, that is the student roll number, name, and course. Now it will also return a new response entity object, which will now will have again two parameters. One will be the string that will be printed if it is successful, and it will be okay, one row affected. It can be anything you want to print. Second is the HTTP status code that we want to handle, dot, and in this case the best suited is created. Catch, we will simply print the error, e dot print stack trace, and finally we will return new response entity failed and http status as not acceptable. Okay, so there is some typo mistake, let me correct it. Yes. Okay, so now we have completed our add student class, but now the question is how we will test it and how we will send our data to the server. We usually create an UI where we have a form and on clicking submit, data goes to server. But here we are not creating an UI. So in that case, we can use an API testing tool like Postman. I already have installed it on my system. So Postman is basically an API testing tool. We will be using Postman here to test our API to perform and test that it is working for all the operations, that is create, read, update and delete. Okay. So this is the Postman. For creating a new request, you have to click on new HTTP and we will get a new uh, fresh page. So before using Postman, we have to run this application. So there is some error in my REST API controller. Okay, so it has to be response entity, not request entity. Yes, now the error is gone. So to run the application, go to my REST API application, right click, run as Spring Boot app. It will take some time. And now you can see we have got started my REST API and Tomcat started on port 8080. Okay, so let's test our API. Now open the Postman again, set the method name as post, enter the URL http colon double slash localhost colon 8080 slash then our base URL, that was my REST API, and add, that was the post mapping. Now to send the data, click on body raw, and here we will send the data in the form of JSON. So we will have roll number of the student 101. We will have name. Okay, it is of type string. Then we have course, and it is again of type string. Now click on send. Now you can see we get the output here, that is one row affected. So this means that a new row is created in the student table with the values of the roll number as 101, name as Sarthak and course as BTech. So we have performed a create operation. Now how I will test it, that whether it has actually created the data or not. For that you can go to MySQL, enter the password, switch to the database. So here I was using QuestionDB. You can choose the database that you set up in the properties file. Now first of all see whether it has created the table or not. So show tables. Okay, so here you can see we have got the table student. Okay, now let me select asterisk from student. Okay, so here you can see it has created a new row with the values of the roll number as 101, course as BTech and name as Sarthak. So it is perfectly working and we have performed the create operation. So let's enter few more data in it quickly. So let the roll number be 102. Now the name can be Rohan. Course is again BTech. Send. Okay, one row affected. Now 103. Name can be Mohan. And this time we can change the course, let it be BCom. Send. Okay, it is also created. Let me send another data. 104 Sohan, again BCom. Okay, now finally 105, let's say Kailash, and name B, B Pharma. Okay, and send. Okay, so now we have entered 5 data in our student table. Let me first verify it. Yes, we have got all our 5 data. So now we are done with our create implementation. Now let's move to get method, which means that we will be now able to retrieve the data. For that, again go to Spring Boot application. Okay, so here now we will add the get mapping annotation, and the URL will be get. Okay, again a method which will return entity. Now this time it will not return a string, but it will return all the student tables. So it will be in a form of list. Okay, and in list will be of type student. That is, in get method it will show me all of the rows of the student table. Okay, so we will print them in the form of list. Now get student will be the method name, and here we don't have to pass anything. Okay, and it will again return api dot service dot get student. So let me first import list and quickly create get student method in my REST API services. Now here we need to simply print it. So again try, and here it will return new request, sorry, response entity and repo dot. So this time we will get all the list of all the objects of the student table. Okay, for that we have method find all. You can see it returns the list of student type, so we will use it. Okay, and the second parameter will be http status code. Okay, and in catch again we will simply print the error if any. And finally it will return new response entity with a new array list, which will be a blank array list, thus dot, and this time it can be bad request. Okay, there is no restriction, you can use as per the code that suits well for a particular condition. Okay, so here I need to import array list. Okay, so you can see how quickly we have created our get method also, that is the read operation. So to test the API again, we have to first relaunch this application. Okay, so the Tomcat server has started on port 808. To test the API, go to your Postman again. This time set the method as get and change the URL from add to get. Click on send, and you can see we have retrieved our data. That is, we have also performed the read operation. We are getting all the data that we have just stored in the database. That is the roll number 101, 102 with the name and its courses. So now we have implemented 2 methods, that is create using the post mapping and read operation using the get mapping. Now remains 2 more methods, that is update and delete. So to update the data, what we can do is simply go to my REST API controller again. And for update method, we have put mapping. So we will now use the @put mapping annotation, and this time the URL will be update. Again, generate the method public response entity, and this time it will simply return the string. Okay, that updated or not, and then we will check it by using the get method to print all the student list. Okay, so the method name will be update student, and we will return API service dot update student. Now let's quickly create that method. Okay, so our update student method has been created now. So again, we have to simply do the same thing. So I'm just copying our add student in the update. Date means both creation or updation. So if the data is not present there, then it will create the data, and if the data will be already present there, then it will just update the information. Okay, so in this case, what we have to do this. Okay, we forgot one thing, that we have to also accept the data. Okay, request body, and it will again of type student, and we will pass the stud here. Now in API service, we will accept this data, and now simply we will print repo.save. So this will either create the data, or if the data will be already present there, we'll just update the data. Okay, and it will print the same thing. Okay, one row affected, and this time let it be http status dot okay. Rest everything will be same. Okay, so now our update method is also ready. Let's check it through Postman. Now this time change it to put, and this time I want to change the data. Let's say I want to change Kailash, or you can say where we have roll number 105. I want to make it from B Pharma to BCom. So I will just change the data. Click on send button. Okay, we have not changed the method over here, so we have to change update. Now click on send. Okay, so there is some mistake in our code. Let me check it. In my REST API control. Okay, we have not relaunched the application. Okay, so relaunch it. So Tomcat servers has started on port 808. Let us now again go to Postman. Now just click on send. And now you can see the data has been updated. To verify, just change it to get and change the method as get. So this time, the where we have roll number 105 and name as Kailash, the course should become BCom. Earlier it was B Pharma. So let's check it. Click on send. So here we have 105 Kailash, and now you can see the course has changed to BCom from B Pharma. So our update operation has also been performed. So now you can see how easily we are able to perform all the CRUD operations. Okay. So the last method that remain is delete method. So for delete method, we have delete mapping. Delete. Now here the thing is, I will be needing some data from the user that will act as a constant on basis of which I will delete data from a table. Let it be roll number. So this time I will accept the data from URL. Okay. So it will be roll number. I will simply copy paste this method and just change the method name this time. delete student, and since I am accepting data through URL, so it will be path variable, and roll number is of integer, so int roll number, and API service dot delete student, I will pass roll number. Now let quickly create this method. So now here we have got our delete student method. So the only thing we need to change is I will simply copy this whole code from here and just changed, instead of repo.save, this time it will be repo.delete by id. Okay, and simply pass the roll number in it. Now let's relaunch it. Okay, so Tomcat started on port 808. Go to Postman. Now here change the method to delete. This time it will be delete, and let's say I want to delete this Kailash which has the roll number 105. So I will pass 105 within the URL. Click on send, and now you can see we get the output, okay, one row affected, which means that the row that was having the roll number 105 will be deleted from a table. To verify, what we can do is simply type get in the URL and click send. Okay, so there is some, okay, we have not changed it to get. Yes, now click again on send. So here you can see after 104, 105 has been deleted. You can also verify it from the MySQL. So in MySQL, now if you type select asterisk from student, so you can see 105 that was B Pharma Kailash is now deleted. So we have implemented all our CRUD operations that were get, post, put and delete. Okay. So here we complete our CRUD operation implementation, and our REST API is also working perfectly. We also saw that how we can test our API using Postman, which provide us that we can send the data, we can retrieve the data. That is, we can perform all the CRUD operation using these methods. That is get, post, put, delete. Okay, so you can also perform many other things, like you can get the data on the basis of the roll number, or if you also want to write complex queries like you want to include group by, order by, so in that case also you can write all those queries and perform all the operations within your Spring Boot application. So that's all in this video. I hope you would have understood. At least you might have some better understanding of REST API, how they are created, how you can implement CRUD operations on it, as well as how beautifully you can use Spring Boot application, which reduces your work, and how easily you can create REST API. So that's all in the video. Thank you for watching the video.